Welcome to Cartoonist Guide to the Bible. I'm Steve Thomason, and I am drawing my way through the Gospel of John this year because we're preaching about it at the church where I serve, Easter Lutheran Church, and I'm teaching a class on the Gospel of John every Sunday night. Come and join us if you want to. Check it out on the website. So each week I've been going live on Wednesday mornings to show you the next installation. This week, following the narrative lectionary, we come to this wild passage in John chapter 6, where Jesus claims to be the bread of life. And he says some pretty amazing things. So I actually have two different PowerPoints for you that you can download absolutely free. So what I want to do in this video is I want to just show you where you can find the PowerPoints, and then I'm going to walk through the PowerPoints and talk a little bit about John chapter 6. So let's check it out. We're going to come to cartoonistbiblecom. That's how you get to it. This is the homepage. The fastest way to get to John is to just hover over the bookshelf, come over here and click on John itself. This is the main page. Now, I've created this interactive outline of the Gospel of John, so you can find your way around. We are coming now to chapter 6. We're about halfway through this thing called the Book of Signs. So I'm going to click on chapter 6. And here we go. This is hot off the presses. This is a cartoonist guide to John 2022 version. And so I've got this comic book page that takes us through chapter 6. And we'll get to that in a second. You can download this as a PowerPoint, which is pretty cool. If you want to download it, all you got to do is click this button and click in here. If you type in 0, then you can download it for free. If you want to type in whatever amount you would like to donate, I'd appreciate it. Helps me pay for the cost of this website. But then also, if you keep scrolling down under commentary, you'll see that I've got this illustration, which I did 4 years ago when we were preaching through John then in 2018. And there's a link here to, I called it Come and See, because that was the name of our series. And it's also a key phrase in the Gospel of John. And this particular image was designed specifically for PowerPoint. It was before I started doing the graphic novels. And so you can download this PowerPoint and you can see how it builds and just cumulatively on the illustration. Again, you can click this button and just type in 0 if you want. Appreciate that. So what happens when you download those is you get PowerPoints. And so I'm going to show you, the thing about these PowerPoints is that, well, they are just a PowerPoint. So you can mix and match. You can add your own slides. You can take slides out. And if you don't use PowerPoint, the download also comes with a folder where each of these slides is just a JPEG image that you can use however you want. So I wanted to share the screen and show you how we can just talk through the whole text together. It's pretty cool. So John chapter 6, it's really important to note that in each of these stories, these signs, they're set in the context of a Jewish festival. And so here, once again, we're coming to the Passover Festival, which if you'll remember, Passover was when the Jewish people remembered the story of the Exodus as God used Moses to lead the people out of slavery in Egypt. And they made the flatbread, right? And they ate this meal, the death angel came and they were delivered. But then also as they wandered through the wilderness, God provided them with manna. And that was the bread of life for them. So keep that in mind. So we have this story. So one of the patterns in the Gospel of John is that we see Jesus do something, which John calls a sign, and then Jesus talks about it. So the thing that he does is, first of all, he's surrounded by a crowd of over 5,000 people. And he says, hey, where can we buy bread for all these people? And Philip says 6 months' wages couldn't do it. And then Andrew finds this boy and says, this boy has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but how could that help? Jesus says, have everybody sit down. And then he feeds 5,000 people. It's huge. And there are 12 baskets of bread left over. And the people are like, this is indeed the prophet who is coming. Boom. So now the people, they're so impressed. They want to forcibly make Jesus the king. And so Jesus withdraws from the crowd, goes up onto a mountain. His disciples get in a boat in the Sea of Galilee to push out and go over to Capernaum. And they leave without Jesus. And then the storm kicks up and Jesus comes and walks on the water. And all he says to them is, I am. Don't be afraid. And boom, he gets right to the next side. Now, this story seems like a non sequitur. What does this have to do with the bread of life? But Jesus is rocking their world, and it is chaos. And the sea has always represented chaos. And Jesus is in relationship with the chaos, and he can just walk right through it and get them to the other side of their chaos. So it's pretty important. So then he shows up in a synagogue in Capernaum, and the crowd that he had just fed, they follow him and they find him there and they start asking him questions. And he's like, you aren't looking for signs. You just want more bread. Start looking for food that endures for eternal life. So he kind of scolds them. And they say, well, what must we do to perform the works of God? And he says, this is the work of God, that you trust in him who he has sent. Now, I have purposefully changed the word from believe to trust. I didn't actually change the word. The Greek word is pisteuo. And I think that trust in English is a better translation than believe, just because of what believe has come to mean in our culture. It's not just an intellectual assent. It's actually trusting, putting faith in something. That's what Jesus is calling us to do in these people. So they say to him, what sign will you give us? God gave manna to our ancestors. And Jesus said, hey, I am the bread of life. And then he says some really harsh things. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry, and whoever trusts in me will never be thirsty. This is indeed the will of my Father, that all who see the Son and trust in him may have eternal life, and I will raise them up on the last day. And the leaders are like, what is going on? I mean, isn't this Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How can we say he's come down from heaven? Like, this is just an ordinary Nazareth dude. And then Jesus says something very shocking. He says, those who eat my flesh and drink my blood have eternal life, and I will raise them up on the last day. What? Eat my flesh? And so, I mean, we can debate, and the purpose of me doing this presentation is to just show you how you can present the text, and then how you want to teach that, but that's up to you. But there's so many different ways. What did Jesus mean when he said, eat my flesh and drink my blood? I will say one thing. I think he's talking about participating in the life of God and what God is doing in the world. But in the second presentation, I'll get into that more. So this kind of clears the crowd. Some people think, whew, that's a lot, Jesus. I don't think I can handle this. And so they leave. So then Jesus turns to his disciples and he says, do you want to leave me too? And Peter says those classic words, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. And then John tells us that Jesus knew that Judas Iscariot would betray him. So there you go. There's the whole page put together. And that's the end of that PowerPoint. Now, if you want to go to, we can walk through the second PowerPoint really quickly, and just to show you how this one, it's a little bit different, where there, again, there's the 5,000, there's the walking on water, I am, don't be afraid. But in this PowerPoint, the image builds on itself, which is pretty cool. Jesus says the bread of God, not Moses, gives life to the world. So here I've got the whole world with the bread and the cup. Give us this bread. And Jesus says, I am the bread of life. Whoever eats of this bread will live forever. And the bread that I will give for the life of the world is my flesh, which he says, sarx, flesh, not body, soma, which is important. Those who come to me will never be hungry. Those who believe in me will never be thirsty. It's important to note that he's not just talking about bread, he's talking about drink as well, which ties back to his conversation with the woman at the well, the living water, and which looks forward to when he goes at the temple in the Feast of Tabernacles, where he says, the living water. So bread and drink, the basic meal of life, is what you are, is what you need. And that's who Jesus is. So those who eat my flesh and drink my blood, which is the bread of life and living water, he says, you remain in me, abide in me. Meno is the Greek word. And this is another theme in the Gospel of John. It's all about relationship and being in relationship with God through Jesus. Jesus shows us what it looks like to be in relationship with God, and participating in the body and blood, the life and work of God in the world is I think, what Jesus is talking about here. So then the teaching is difficult. Many left. And then he turns to his disciples. Do you also wish to go away? Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. And he says, I chose you, the 12, but even then, even among those I chose, there's a devil. Boom. That's the end of that. Now, one last thing. I did write a commentary on this passage. If you scroll down back at the Cartoonist Guide to John, if you click right here, it'll take you to my blog. And I've got a detailed commentary that goes through that whole thing. So boom, there it is. That is this week's installation. That is a Cartoonist Guide to John chapter 6, where Jesus claims he is the bread of life. Hey, I hope that you enjoy this. Every week there's new content coming out for the Gospel of John. Check it out. And I hope you will join us here at A Cartoonist Guide to the Bible, either on this Facebook page, or you can go to join us on our Cartoonist Bible Network. You can see a link to that on the website. So reach out with questions. Have a great week. Blessings on your preaching, teaching, and Bible study.